Do you cringe at communism? If so, smack down the commies with some good old American capitalism. Introducing Anti-Marx. Their products are designed to make people laugh at the mistakes of ancient civilizations, like Russia and Vermont. Show your Putin-loving friends how much you care with the new Anti-Marx logo accessories. Designated driver, but your friends offer you a shot of vodka? Turn around with your new hoodie and show them you'd rather take a shot of freedom. You can find these and other cool products on the website right now. Just click the link in the video description or go to antimarx.shop. And if you order today, they'll even give you 15% off your first purchase. Just use coupon code Innkeeper15. So what are you waiting for? A government check? Go check out their amazing designs right now. Go to antimarx.shop right now. In the hundreds of games of Dungeons & Dragons that I've played, I've seen the spell Haste cast countless times. It's a very popular spell. In fact, do a Google or YouTube search and you'll find dozens of articles and videos about this spell. Interestingly enough though, its sister spell, Slow, doesn't seem to have as much interest. You don't find as many articles or videos about it. The videos and articles that you do see on the spell Slow tend to be comparison videos with the spell Haste. And that is what we're here to do today as well. Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I am your innkeeper, and today we'll be talking about the spells Haste and Slow. A quick shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys so much. You hung in there last month where we had a bit of a rough month with content creation, but we're back on the train now. So thank you guys for all the support throughout everything. And I'll link the Patreon below. If you want to support my content, you can do so there. I also have a Discord server. Feel free to join. It's still kind of young and not as active, but the more people go in there, the more active it's becoming. So let's get in there and talk about some Dungeons & Dragons and other role-playing games. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. You can support me that way as well. So why are we comparing the two spells? Well, first of all, they're both third level spells, and there's a limited number of third level spells that you're going to be able to know. But the most important reason is that they're both concentration spells. And since you only can concentrate on one spell at a time, it's pretty important to choose the right one for the right situation. So first I'm going to break down each spell, and then I'm going to talk about the different uses and benefits and limitations of each one. So let's start with Haste. Haste is castable by artificers, sorcerers, and wizards. It takes one action to cast with a 30-foot range, and it's a 1-minute concentration spell. This is how it works. You target one willing creature, their speed is doubled, they get a +2 bonus to AC, and they get advantage on dexterity saving throws. But the biggest reason that people cast this spell is the final benefit, which is the target of the spell gains an additional action on each of their turns, which they can use to attack, dash, disengage, hide, or use an object action. Now that's pretty good. An additional action is a huge boost to action economy for one character. But sometimes it's very easy to get caught up and just see stars when you're seeing this spell. There are some drawbacks to this spell. The biggest drawback of this spell is that when the spell ends, the person that you cast it on basically loses a turn. So they're lethargic, they can't move, and they can't take actions or bonus actions. So basically, you want to make sure that this spell lasts through an entire combat. Now, you can still take reactions, so that character can still take attack of opportunities and other reactions like casting the spell shield or absorb elements, that kind of stuff. For the most part though, the target is going to be out for a turn, no question. So is Haste as good as people say? Personally, I think that Haste is a very good spell, but it's very situationally dependent. It's not a universally good spell like some people make it out to be. You don't want to cast it every combat. It is not the best thing that you could be doing with your concentration every single combat. In fact, I believe there's a limited number of situations where Haste is going to be good, and we're going to get into that. The first glaring limitation here is that Haste cannot allow casters to cast 2 spells per round, which would have been probably the best thing you could do with this spell if it were possible. Unfortunately, it's not. So instead, most people haste the melee combatants in the group. So how much of an impact does this have? If you haste the melee combatant, a fighter or barbarian, they're going to be dealing an extra attack, which if they're using a great weapon, at the most it's going to be 2d6 plus modifiers per round extra damage if they land the hit. So by the time that you can cast the spell Haste, which is 5th level, that's going to be an average of 12 damage on a hit, assuming a higher end. It's definitely, the average could be lower if that fighter's build or that barbarian's build doesn't give them additional bonuses. I'm assuming a +4 strength modifier, a +1 weapon, and a great weapon that deals 2d6 damage per hit. So you might be able to do 22 damage on average if that character has taken the Great Weapon Master feat and are doing the +10 damage situation. But keep in mind that dealing that +10 damage does grant a penalty to attack. So there's a chance that that bonus action that they're going to get every turn is not always going to lead to dealing extra damage. They might miss that attack. Let's be honest here. That can be impactful in certain situations, but as a spellcaster, you could be doing things that are way more impactful than just 12 or 22 damage per round. I think it can get a little bit better if you cast it on a paladin, let's say, who can smite, because now you're dealing a bunch of damage. But the thing is, if you cast it on a paladin that's smiting, they're using up resources. There are not unlimited number of smites that they can do, so they're going to burn through those very quickly, and then we're back to square one here. So what about monks and rogues? Well, I think monks are probably the worst ones that you're going to be wanting to do this on, because their damage dealing is not that high at all, and at the most you're going to get just an extra chance to hit with a stunning strike. But even that is a very limited resource, just like the paladin smites, and that's going to run out very quickly. And again, once that runs out, they're just going to be dealing a very minimal amount of damage, less than your cantrip damage probably every single round with the extra attack. Think about that. They're going to be dealing less than your cantrip damage extra every single round. That's pretty terrible. So of all the melee combatants, probably the best one that you can use this on is the rogue. And I say that because they're going to be able to possibly sneak attack twice per round if you're able to haste them. And sneak attack is not a limited resource, so they can do sneak attacks 1,000 times if they wanted to, and they're not going to run out of it. Now, a rogue can only sneak attack once per turn, so how does this actually work? Well, a rogue can only sneak attack once per turn, but remember, every time they end their turn, it's someone else's turn, and if they're able to land an attack, they can actually sneak attack on that additional attack. So a rogue, let's say, that takes an attack of opportunity with their reaction outside of their turn can get sneak attack damage on that attack of opportunity. So here's where haste kicks in. There's this thing in Dungeons and Dragons called the ready action. You can use your action on your turn to ready an action, which then basically triggers on an effect that you determine. So if you say the orc boss looks at me, that's the trigger, then your readied action goes off. You can make it even more easy to trigger than that, but it's just as an example. So basically that would use your reaction outside of your turn. So you can use your main action as a rogue to ready an action, and then take your hasted action for an attack, dealing some sneak attack damage. Then when it's the enemy's turn or the next character in initiative's turn, your readied action goes off and you attack again, and you're able to get a sneak attack again. So you're able to get sneak attack twice as a rogue with the spell haste. Now there, we're talking about significant amounts of damage consistently, again, assuming that they hit, but yeah, that's going to be probably the best melee character that you're going to want to haste. Now, I want to be clear here. Haste can be great, but if you're facing multiple foes, let's say you guys are fighting 8 enemies and your party is 4 players. That's 12 characters, each taking attack actions. At level 5, the melee combatants are probably doing 2 attacks per turn, and the enemies are probably doing 2 attacks per turn. So you're looking at a minimum of 20-something attacks per round that are going around, right? One additional attack out of those 20-something is not going to make a big impact. So you got to kind of think about it that way. In terms of action economy, one extra attack in a bucket of 23 attacks is not a huge increase in the action economy here. Now, of course, you can do other things. You can take the dodge action, you can take the dash action, and all that would definitely be something that might be tactically advantageous in a combat against multiple foes. In that case, I would say maybe haste would be a good thing. Say foes are very spread out, hasting a melee combatant that can run up to each one and reach them each round might actually be beneficial. But those are very rare circumstances and the exceptions, as there are always exceptions to these things. So what do I think? I think haste is probably best against a single foe or maybe two foes altogether. So if you're fighting a boss enemy, one large foe that has a ton of hit points, now we're talking about a huge increase to your action economy, because a party of 4 fighting against a foe that has, say, 3 attacks at level 5, you'll probably be facing foes that have 2 or 3 attacks. That's 7 attacks total in a round, or 9 attacks total in a round. 1 extra attack is a big increase there against that. So again, single foe is when I would say haste is good. Against multiple enemies, I think there are countless options that are better than haste that you could do as a spellcaster. And I know that there are additional benefits. The bonus to the AC and dexterity saving throw advantage, those are okay, but that's not why you're casting haste, let's be honest. There are lower level spells that can give all that to characters that you could be casting instead of haste and wasting a 3rd level slot and your concentration on. So those are not why you're casting the spell. The movement speed increase is probably the better one of these additional benefits, but even that can be done with a lower level spell. So the extra action is really why you're casting haste, and that extra action is going to be mostly beneficial against single foe or maybe 2 enemies at once. So this is why I say that haste is only circumstantially good, not universally good. So why is it so popular? I think the popularity of haste is because it makes that one ally that you cast it on feel really powerful, and it makes your allies love you. When you cast haste on an ally, usually you see them light up and get excited because now they feel like they're going to take on the world. I see this happen every single time one of the party members in my group gets hasted. Every single time that party member goes, oh yeah, it's beatdown time, and they feel awesome. And you know, in their mind, after that's over, a couple sessions later, all they remember is them running around the field killing everything. They forget that haste ended early maybe, and they had to lose a turn, and that lost turn didn't make up for the extra stuff that they got to do the 2 turns prior. So think about that. If you're getting 2 attacks per round as a melee combatant, and you get hasted and you get 1 extra attack one round, 1 extra attack the other round, and a 3rd round you lose it because you lost haste for whatever reason, whether the caster lost concentration or whatever, now you're losing your 2 normal attacks. So that haste, all it did was transfer those 2 attacks you lost that round to a couple rounds earlier, which, again, what did haste really do there? Nothing. You had the same number of attacks in the same number of rounds, right? But it does make that player feel strong, and they only remember that. And, you know, there is value in that. I think that having your party feel fun and great and heroic is why we play Dungeons and Dragons, and I think haste is one of the few spells that really makes players feel like, oh man, I am this badass hero. And there is value in that, so I'm not discounting that at all. Casting haste outside of combat is pretty insignificant because the extra action doesn't really do much. Outside of combat, you're not tracking turns and rounds. The time flows different outside of combat, so therefore that extra action is extremely insignificant. The only thing that haste is going to do outside of combat is boost your movement speed and boost your armor class and dexterity saves. And again, there are other spells that are going to be able to do that at lower levels, so definitely don't cast haste outside of combat. Now, I know I may have come across as pretty negative on haste, but honestly, I do think this spell is a good spell. I just want to emphasize that the limitations of this spell are sometimes overlooked, and the spell is not universally great, and it's not perfect for sure. So I hope that I haven't made it seem like I despise this spell or anything like that. I just think that the praise that this spell gets sometimes is unwarranted. And I think that a lot of people at the moment, when they use it, they think they're going to do this whole awesome thing and maybe end up feeling disappointed. They might not, like the example I gave earlier. They might just remember the cool things that they got to do with it, and that's fine. But generally, as a dungeon master, when I see people cast haste, a majority of the time, they're disappointed by the results. Now, let's talk about slow. Slow is castable by only sorcerers and wizards. It's a 1-action casting time, 120-foot range, with 1 minute concentration requirement. So you can affect up to 6 creatures of your choice in a 40-foot cube. And affected creature speed is halved. They get a -2 penalty to their armor class and to the dexterity saving throws, and they can't use reactions. on their turn, they can either use an action or a bonus action, but not both. And if the action it takes is an attack action, they're only going to get one attack during that action. If the creature tries to cast the spell with a casting time of one action, they have to roll a d20, and if they roll 11 or higher, the spell takes effect on the following turn. So it can really, really slow down spellcasters, and it makes them concentrate. So if anything happens where they take damage and fail a concentration spell or a concentration check, that spell fails, even if it's not a concentration spell. So let's say you have a caster that's trying to cast Fireball when they've been slowed. They have to, and they roll that d20, they're going to have to wait till the following round. If they take a hit and fail the concentration check, that Fireball does not go off. You've effectively countered that spell. A one-action spell that you cast, you can concentrate on, and for 1 minute, there's a 50-50 chance that the spells that caster wants to use are going to take an extra round. And there's a chance that they're going to fail if they're taking hits during that time. But that said, and as good as that sounds, the effects on spellcasters is random. So let's be honest, you can't really count on it. I don't recommend casting slow on a spellcaster because there is a chance that they're going to roll below the 11 on that d20 and nothing happens to them. And most casters are not using more than one action in a turn. So casting spells every round is still going to make them a pretty impactful enemy to deal with. So casting slow on a caster is probably not the thing that you're going to want to do or go out of your way to do. So to make the most out of slow, what you want to do is to cast it against a group of melee combatants. Melee combatants with reduced movement are easy targets for ranged attacks, and you add to that the reduced armor class that this slow spell is granting. You can really turn a battle around that way. And not just that, but melee combatants depend on their reaction to lock down casters and weaker party members. They try to engage spellcasters and the weaker party members of the group, and then they have to use their action to disengage or dodge to try to get away from these melee combatants. If you've slowed them down, you can just walk away from them without fear of retaliation, and it really helps your spellcasters in your group avoid getting locked down by these melee combatants and getting in situations where things can go south very quickly. And it's also great that you can affect up to 6 creatures of your choice. So there's no friendly fire there. You can cast it into a melee and feel safe that your party members are not going to be affected by the spell. At 5th level, if you're fighting a group of 6 creatures that each get 2 attacks per round, you've effectively used one spell and reduced the action economy of the enemy by 6 attacks per round. That is insanely good action economy. Actually could be better than that because you're also getting rid of their reactions, potentially getting rid of 12 attacks per round from the enemy if you're fighting 6 enemies. That is amazing and way more impactful than adding 1 extra attack to a party member. Think about it that way. You can cast haste. You're fighting 6 characters. You can cast haste on 1 party member, giving them 1 extra attack, or you can reduce the enemy's attacks by up to 12 attacks per round. Which one do you think that you're going to prefer in that situation? This spell really can pack a punch when you're dealing with large groups of enemies or medium-sized groups of enemies. But because it doesn't stop the enemies completely, I really don't recommend using it against single foes. So that's where haste kind of beats this one out. A successful save from this spell against a single foe means that nothing happened, and you've just wasted your action as a spellcaster where you could have been doing something different. If that enemy has legendary resistance, they'll succeed, and slow did nothing to them. Even if they fail, they get to save every round. That single foe might succeed at some point, and that's it. You just impacted them for 1 round. And a single foe is going to get how many attacks? At 5th level, maybe 2. And if they have legendary actions, they can still take those actions outside of their turn because slow does not have any stipulations on taking attacks outside of your turn. Therefore, you've done absolutely nothing to this enemy, even if they failed their saving throw. You've reduced them by 1 attack per round, let's say. Not extremely impactful at all. Between haste and slow, I've seen a lot of videos that compare the 2 spells and they make the following arguments. Haste always works. It always works. It's what everybody always says. Slow does nothing on a successful save, so there's a chance that the spell will fizzle out. So let's address these 2 things because I don't agree with either one of them at all. So here's my counter argument to those people. First, the haste always works argument, right? That's a very flawed argument. It may succeed as far as affecting the target on the initial casting, but the spell can be dispelled and you can lose concentration. And if that happens, that person now has lost a turn. So the always works things, if you really think about it, it can work against you in certain circumstances, right? Plus, this target still has to succeed on their additional attack in order to benefit from it. If they fail their attack, then the haste really didn't do anything, did it? So the always works thing it's not the same as saying magic missile always works, because magic missile always deals the damage 100% of the time, right? Haste doesn't always work. It's not extra damage with 0 chance of failure. It's not like magic missile or some other, spells that at least deal half damage. Haste can have 0 impact. If that player you cast it on misses their attack, haste did nothing. If you take a hit and you lose concentration, haste did not just nothing, it hindered your group. So the haste always works argument is extremely flawed. It's not like bless. Bless always works, right? Bless always gives a plus whatever bonus to saving throws and whatever else. Not just that, but there are so many opportunity costs to haste. The dynamic of a battle can change, especially a big battle. It can change, and when that happens, generally you want to switch tactics, change what spell you want to concentrate on. Haste kind of puts this like cloud over you as a caster, where you have to basically commit to it. You cast haste on someone in the beginning of that combat, you're going to have to concentrate on that till the end of the combat, unless you want that person to lose an entire turn. You can't change it up. Another wave of enemies comes in, and now you want to control them with fog cloud or web or whatever. Sorry, dude. Now you have to make a decision. You can't just be like, oh, let's switch tactics. Let's cast web. You have to sit down and be like, is it worth it? You have to analyze the situation. Is it worth it now to end haste and kind of make that one character extremely vulnerable in order to take down that extra wave that has just come in? Is it worth it? Or do I keep haste going and just let that new wave of enemies just come at the party and attack us? There is a huge opportunity cost to haste that is completely overlooked by people. You can't just switch tactics like you can with pretty much every single other spell in Dungeons & Dragons. Haste is the only spell that you actually have to sit down and reconsider your tactics. So I hope I've torn down that haste always works argument. So now the next argument about slow, that it can fail if all 6 targets succeed their saving throws. That's pretty flawed too. The chances of 6 creatures succeeding their saving throws, it's pretty much almost a 0% chance. You have to literally be the most unlucky person in the history of D&D in order for 6 characters to succeed their saving throw. But it is true that slow does nothing on a successful saving throw, which is why I don't recommend you cast it against a single foe. That is why you have to analyze your situation and decide which spell is better for that situation. You do not want to cast slow unless you're fighting 5 or more creatures. If you're casting slow on 5 or 6 creatures, you're going to nail at least some of them. I would say probably more than half of them. If you're fighting two characters, the chances of them succeeding against slow is probably going to be, pretty high for them to both succeed and your spell to have done nothing. So don't cast slow if you're fighting a small amount of enemies. So what are my recommendations for haste and slow? In my opinion, haste works best when facing a single foe. I think I've drilled that point home tremendously. So you're fighting a boss, haste your melee combatants. Let them go to town against that boss. Give them the power against the boss, and they will love you for it. Getting to land an extra smite or a sneak attack against that enemy, specifically a lone boss, that could be extremely impactful. Slow, on the other hand, is definitely going to be best when facing a group of foes, medium to large group, at least 5 or more creatures. Then you cast slow on them and really reduce their action economy and let your party go to town against them. The bottom line here is that both spells are going to provide benefits in different situations. Haste is not great when facing a large group of enemies. The larger the group of enemies, the less impactful haste is going to be. Slow is just really bad when facing a single foe or maybe even 2 foes. Each one shines where the other one is lacking. Both spells, in my opinion, are circumstantial. Neither one is universally good. Neither one is good when facing spellcasters. I wouldn't recommend either one against that. I don't recommend casting either one against ranged attackers either. Instead, I would go for more impactful control spells like web, Fog Cloud, or Sleet Storm. Those are way better against casters and ranged attackers. And as far as picking one versus the other, if you're able to take both, like wizards probably can, then I would say take them both and then cast each one as necessary. If you have limited options, like sorcerers do, I would go for a less circumstantial spell and leave both of those behind, unless your build or flavor for the character calls for one of these in particular. And then to address one final point here, I wanted to address something that came up recently in a session that I was playing, and we didn't know how to handle it. I had to think about how this interaction works, and I thought I'd provide some of my ideas as to how this would work to you guys. Of course, feel free to disagree or ask your dungeon master if they agree or disagree with me. So if someone has been hasted and another caster casts slow on that same person, what happens? Some people think the two spells just cancel each other, kind of like a counter spell or a wizard battle in Harry Potter or something, where the two spells are connecting to each other. I don't think that it should work that way, because Dungeons & Dragons doesn't have a precedent for that type of interaction between two spells other than, say, counterspell. So here's how I would rule. The movement speed effects and the AC bonus and penalty do cancel each other out because they're exactly the same. Movement speed is doubled, and now it's halved. So you're back to your normal movement speed. AC bonus of +2, you get an AC penalty of -2 with slow, you're back to a 0 bonus. Those cancel each other out. Dexterity saving throws are a little bit different. Haste gives you advantage, so you'd roll dexterity saving throws at advantage. Slow gives you a -2, so you'd roll your dexterity saving throws at advantage, but with a -2 penalty. Haste does not affect reactions, but slow does. So therefore, the target loses the ability to take reactions. As far as actions, slow says that they can only take an action or a bonus action and not both. It doesn't say they can only take one action. So in my opinion, a person that is hasted and slowed takes 2 actions. No matter how many attacks they get per round, they get 1 attack on the first action, 1 attack on the second action. No bonus action. If they take a bonus action, then based on the wording of slow, they wouldn't be able to take their free action from haste. So if they take a bonus action, that's all they get for the round. So that's my interpretation on how the two would react with each other. Of course, feel free to disagree or have your dungeon master disagree. There hasn't been any official rulings regarding this. So that is based on DM fiat in this case. Just thought I'd share my opinions on how that worked. And that does it for today's video on Haste and Slow. I do hope that you found this video helpful. And if you have any questions or comments, or if I missed anything, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. And always, don't forget to click like and subscribe if you're one of those people that really despise me asking in the beginning and the end of the video. That's for you. Like and subscribe if you like this video. Thank you very much. As always, I'm your innkeeper from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk with you then. That's for you. Like and subscribe if you like this video. Thank you very much. As always, I am your innkeeper from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. As always, I am your innkeeper from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk with you then. Oh, I love being cheesy. Okay. All right, Bob. Yes. All right, down. We're done. Let me do this again. As always, I'm your innkeeper from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk with you then.